We lived very simply. And yet I still evolved into this very creative person. I did not set out to be an artist. It came and tapped me on the shoulder and it said, hey, you're an artist.
Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Will Chernoff, and you're listening to the Rhythm Changes Podcast, a home for creative, improvising, local music people. This show is an ongoing, open-ended conversation series with folks who make their community fun and prosperous. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to follow this feed wherever you get your podcasts and visit us at our website, rhythmchanges.ca. Our guest today is an author, designer, and artist. She won a National Indie Excellence Award for her first book, Inspire, which is part of the Front Matter Press publishing program with distribution by Fitzhenry and Whiteside. You can find her most active on Instagram at The Art Part of My Heart. In her day career, she has run an interior design firm for over 30 years. And she is my mother, and I'm happy to be in her home in New West, bringing to you on the Rhythm Changes podcast, Mary Chernoff.
Thanks for having me, Will.
I would love for you to paint a picture for those who are not so lucky that they get to see this room that we're in right now. What is this room like, this upstairs den of yours that we're recording in?
Well, it used to be your bedroom.
Yeah, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
That's right. And now it's my dressing room. And you came up here a few years ago and you said, wow, the sound is really good in here.
Yeah.
Because there's coat racks everywhere because I collect coats. So there's a wall probably with about 50 coats on it and some evening wear and all kinds of hats, purses, scarves. So all the surfaces of the room are covered in textiles. About 2 feet deep because they're all hanging. So, yeah, you remarked at the sound quality in here, which I never would have clued into.
But what you don't have up here, and you have them downstairs instead, is books. And I mean, you've published a book and you've loved reading books for as long as I can remember. I'm pretty sure you read pretty much every day.
I do.
When did you start doing that?
Well, that's interesting. I can't remember when I started.
Yeah.
I know I do. I know I do it a lot now, and I do more and more and more and more and more. I think I do more now that my son has grown up because
you have more time.
I have more time. Okay, when did I start to love books? SFU, 1978.
Oh, way back. Okay.
English 101.
Okay.
18 years old and read Somerset Maugham's Of Human Bondage. It was a big, thick, heartbreaking and aching tale. So I think that just started my love affair with wonderful novels. And I like to take holidays and lie on the beach. So I always took books along for that. And just have always read fiction. So that's, 40 years, more than 40 years ago. And it just seems to be snowballing. Nonfiction as well, and every type and form of literature, making my way through all the classics, and in between reading just really fluffy, entertaining things, which is really the preferred book this last year.
Yeah. But like a lot of people who love to read to that high of a frequency are really, really introverted. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that you're not, because I know you have some introverted characteristics, kind of like I am. I think we both love talking to people, but we also like to have our own time, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm this interesting combination of half introverted person who loves to be happy to be home alone, and I enjoy my own company.
Yeah.
But then the other half is party girl, entertainer extraordinaire, throwing dinner parties and going out and enjoying live performances, music, stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked Will Clements on this show if he thought he was an introvert or an extrovert, and he also said he was right down the middle, and so did I. So we're all kind of in that bucket.
I'm half and half.
Yeah. But you've supported a fair number of arts organizations by going out and seeing stuff over the years, quite a bit, especially in the theater world, right? And your whole thing on your website, marychernoff.com, which is where people can buy your book and read your blog and learn all about your creative life. Like you make an effort to champion each of the arts that you like, right? There's a whole bunch of them, and you have blog posts and stories about how you've interacted with each of them, right? And I know theater and performing is a big one. And the other ones are like home and domestic, culinary and food for sure, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What else?
I realized, and I think this is what was the very beginnings of the book, I realized I loved all the arts.
Yeah.
Literary, culinary, visual, and performing. And in performing both music and theater. So I just realized I loved them all. So the Arts Club Theater, and all the local community theaters, the Vagabond Players here in New West, and all kinds of fabulous music, and going to a lot of your musical events at a lot of the cafes and restaurants around town where you've played over time. So just anybody, and buying anybody's book that's ever written a book, and anybody that creates something like that. I'm just so happy to support them and give them that attention and give them a shout out. And we can't share that enough.
Yeah. And you've also had a long history of enjoying like Bard on the Beach, right? As another example. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my sister and I, that's our sort of birthday celebration every year is we enjoy that together and have a fun evening with it. So that's something that we also really enjoy. Absolutely.
Yeah. You're pretty good at throwing a party. I think most people who know you would say that you're good at making that happen.
I can even say that with confidence. I am very good at that. It's one of my superpowers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. One of your many superpowers is knowing how to throw a party and having an intuitive sense of what to do kind of leading up to it, and probably while you're there too, to make that happen. And I mean, there have been lots of great examples of that in this house, in your home here. But one of the ones that I also remember, and we'll talk about how you brought the book Inspire up to this point, but it was the launch party of your book, which you were the maestro of just completely, in that you rented a space and you brought in 150 people and you decked it out and people had a really good time. What do you remember about the launch party for your book?
Oh, that was great. Well, I wanted to bring some of the pages to life. So we, of course, you and Gabrielle Debreuil performed. We had people reading pages from the book. One of my best friends, Yvonne, spoke, and my friend Christopher Gaze, Mr. Bard on the Beach, so eloquently read a passage of his choosing. And also, we I baked a lot of the things that were in the book, some of the favorite recipes. So we created those so guests could savor those. We did a timeline of the process of the book, and I think you hinted that we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So we had all these different stations. It was at the Fraser River Discovery Center. It was the coolest location. And it was to bring to life all the different facets of the book that are all of the arts. So it was a very good and very fun party.
Yeah, and I'm going to somebody's CD release concert tonight, and I think that when you just nail one of those celebrations for something new that comes out, it just makes it all the more memorable, right? Like, yeah, that really stands out. It's like, wow, that happened. So that was in the year 2017. When did you actually start writing and putting together the first pieces of the book?
I think it was about 4 years before that. The first 3 years were very low key and slow paced as I sort of figured out what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, what form it was going to take, who was going to help me, and then the last year was quite action packed and quite dense in terms of the workload. So yeah, and it also draws on many years before that. And sometimes people have very flippantly looked at a piece of artwork and said, "Well, how long did it take you to do that?" And the correct artist answer is all my life.
Whole life, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we drew on experiences that we had, particularly for the parenting and family sort of chapters, on stuff I did with you when you were, 3, 4, 5 years old. It's a gathering of stuff. It was on my bucket list to write a book, and I thought, no, it's not going to be a novel. What is it going to be? It's going to be these essays about experiences, about creativity and resourcefulness. And yeah, write what you know, and then it's like, well, what kind of topics and categories are there going to be? And so that was several years before that last year of hard work began.
I remember that on my birthday that year in 2017, I was doing a big copy edit of the book, and I spent most of the day going through it page by page.
That's right. I mean, I even made you do that on your birthday because we had a deadline, and you were so helpful.
Well, I accepted, right? So,
and you're a very good
you definitely
copy
didn't
editor.
Make me.
Yeah, I felt bad.
Then that's half the book's life at this point, basically, because you had that 4-ish years to create it, publish it in 2017, and then there's the rest of its lifespan where, it's funny because you put out the book, started writing the book, and published it at the time when your day career professional life was really heating up and it was really demanding a lot of you. And so then there's this period where the book is out and you don't think about it as much as you had to for the previous 4 years, and then it wins an award 3 years later.
I think it was a couple of years after it won the National Indie Excellence Awards for Best Gift Book. Yeah. I do remember that last year, really doing a lot of the heavy lifting on it and putting in a 8-10 or so hour day at my day job, and then pulling about a 6-hour shift in the evening on the book. But it's amazing when you're doing something that you love. It doesn't feel like torture or work or anything. It's so exhilarating and so satisfying. So at 1 a.m, I'd have a nice, relaxing hot shower before I go to bed. And it was blissful, that feeling of satisfaction of doing it. But it also burned me out, and I kind of crashed after that.
That's so interesting that you describe it that way, because I've actually had that experience as well, where and it's very clearly delineated because we lived in a particular home for this time, and it was in 2018 for me when we moved to this suite in East Van, and I started working full time, and I also started Early Spirit with Gabrielle. And so that was the only time I had a full-time non-music day job that I was going to. And then on the weekends and around that, we were working to start the band, and we were just going all out on that. And I remember how that felt exhausting, but also felt super cool.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the creative process, and really, it doesn't really matter if it's music or art or writing or anything or creating a performance. It's, this is the process, and we do things to support our way of life, and then we do our artistic and creative pursuits, and often we have to balance both of them. And yeah, it really doesn't matter which medium you're working in.
Yeah. Then Front Matter Press. What were the things that were scaring you the most about putting the book out, and what did they really help you with the most? A lot of my friends are independent artists and stuff like that, and they have to learn to do all these things from scratch, and they don't have the traditional kind of professional environment that provides all these other services, right? So maybe when you're publishing your first book, you don't know what some of the things are.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you aren't lucky enough to have a publishing house taking you on, which is really rare these days, and guiding you through everything or doing it for you, and you have to do it yourself. It's just all the stuff you don't even know. So they help sort out how I got an ISBN number, what I had to do, who I had to send this to, where I had to register this, and then said, well, you should, we should do this kind of edit we should do a substantive edit to sort of get the gist of what the whole book feels like. And then, then you'll need a copy edit. And then, so they were really great in suggesting things. And I think the goal was to come up with a really professional product. So to produce a book that could stand among other books that was really professional in quality, and even down to the kind of paper that should be on the cover and what kind of binding we used. They were really experienced about that. So that was just invaluable.
Well, mission accomplished, right? I mean, your book stood out in the back catalog of of theirs and got the interest of the distributor and so on, right? So like clearly that happened.
Yeah. And I think the lovely thing is I'm still proud of it.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it and say, wow, this is a really good book. I still love it just as much.
It's still just as fun for you to like show it to people now this year or next year as it ever was, right? In the last 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you get when you polish it to that extent, right? When you spend that time doing the substantive and the presentation editing.
Well, and then something that just popped into my head was right in the middle of all that was having to learn in design in order to create the manuscript. Oh my goodness. That was a real learning curve, and it's quite a program to work with for somebody who went to design school before computers were invented, and doesn't do AutoCAD or anything like that, or Revit now, to learn in design to do the manuscript myself. And that was so satisfying as somebody who came from an advertising background and has a design background. That was great. And then I also enlisted the help of a book designer to help me with that visual look. She also produced a few templates, which really helped me out in terms of laying out the pages. But then I was good to go and cranked out the 200 and some odd page layouts, copy, photos, sizes. And I think that was one of the most satisfying things of all. And totally. I look forward to doing that again. That was really great.
Yeah, that bears repeating. That was a big achievement in the thing was you designed the layout of the book yourself, basically. And you got help when you needed it from this book designer, but like you did the grunt work in InDesign, and like not every author will do that.
Yeah. So it really made it mine.
Yeah. And you did mention more about your day job there and how you went to design school, but it was pre-internet and it was pre-software tools that like interior designers use today, right?
There's a picture of me at one of my first jobs when I got out of design school, and I'm sitting at my desk and I have a drafting table and I have a phone that's got a cord on it. Totally. And that's all that's on my desk. There's no computer, there's no nothing. That was it. That would have been in 1989, I guess, when I got out of design school.
Yeah. And you did have some early design gigs and jobs where you worked for some other people, but like the bulk of your day job career as an interior designer, you've been under your own roof, like you've been running your own company. Yeah. And that's interesting to me because a lot of me and my friends were doing that too in the arts, right? And so you've had a lot of time to learn lessons about how to be self-employed for 30 years. And
1992, I started my company. And so it'll be 30 years in June coming up.
I mean, it's a long period of time, but like what were some of those lessons learned that actually kept you going? Because it's a roller coaster ride, right?
Yeah, it was always a roller coaster ride. And I think almost everybody at first is really nervous about what jobs are going to come their way, how are they going to survive. And I think as you move through the first 5 years, you get some clients, you realize that you can get work. And I just had a lot of work coming my way, which was wonderful. And so soon enough, I just relaxed. And our business wasn't cyclical or seasonal or anything. It just waxed and waned whenever it wanted to. So sooner or later, I felt comfortable knowing that by the end of the year, it would all kind of level out, and I could earn enough money throughout the year. Sometimes it was quiet. I tried to learn to take that time off, and then sometimes it was busy and I had to work a lot. And I think that's kind of stayed the same the whole time. But I just, soon enough, I just didn't worry about where was the next job coming from. I lived marketing. I talked to people every day of work. I just tried to stay in connection with people. I joined associations. I wrote for my industry's newsletter. I went to the functions. Just made it my business to know everybody and to stay connected, not in a way where I dedicated an hour or so a week to doing it, but I just lived and breathed it all the time. And 30 years later, a lot of people know who I am, and it's been good for work prospects and collaborations. And
when it's low, it's going to be that way, and don't worry about it too much, and try and use that time to relax, and then hit it when it's busy or what?
Yes, but at the beginning like that, I think that would be a little hard for somebody to accept. And maybe you've got to put in a handful of years where you're pounding the pavement and just to lay that foundation, so that comes into play and becomes a reality.
You got to see me when I was in like year 2 and 3 because I was a teenager and I was still living with you.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to see me try and get out there and make mistakes doing that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I've also loved having music in the house the whole time.
Yeah,
So that's
definitely had some of that.
Pretty
I'd have
special.
some rehearsals, I guess, but also sometimes we would have people play music if you had people over.
Oh, it's great.
In the backyard or inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else are your fond memories of like parenting a musician, which was me like 10 years ago when I was in high school kind of thing?
Seeing you on stage, seeing you play your instruments the way you do, and is always inspiring and just makes me so proud. I must say that the Envision Jazz Festivals, where NWSS was just putting on such amazing performances, and it was pretty exciting to be in the audience for that.
Yeah,
And
that's now called the Surrey Schools Jazz Festival, and it's still going as the hub where the people will meet each other. The cool thing for us was that people would meet each other who were equally as enthused about playing jazz from all the schools in BC. And that happens even more now, where it's a really big thing. I mean, I was lucky that I had tons of people at my school, but not everybody does. So the thing about the Surrey Schools Jazz Festival is like you can meet all the people who are like you at all the other schools, and you can make friends and start collaborating with them even while you're still in high school. And then you could like follow each other to university and stuff. And that's really happens now.
As a parent, the fact that you had come from a very small school and here you were going to this big school, the biggest high school in BC
at the time,
I believe, but you found this smaller cohort in the music department that brought it down to a lovely scale again, and you made friends with that. And I mean, the teaching staff there is just so fantastic. Steve Clements and Kelly Prosnick, amazing. That was a safe, comfortable place for you to grow and flourish. And then seeing you go to the jazz festival and seeing that hard work combined with talent and all the fun and excitement of that, validated with all those other groups from the other schools, and just seeing you all enjoying that. That's pretty amazing for a parent. A few years after that, then we're going out to all these different little restaurant bars, and now you're playing in the real world, and it's like, that's my son who's up there playing. That was pretty cool too.
Yeah, totally. Then I just started I started pounding the pavement, like we were saying. Like in those first couple of years, I started going out to as many gigs as I could, and I started playing the ones that I could as well. You don't get too many chances to do it when you're that age, but you are kind of fearless. You're asking around and you're trying to do things. And
basically, no matter what, every parent just wants their child to be happy.
Totally.
So, when you see somebody in their element, enjoying what they're doing, that's just the best.
Yeah, and you have a lot of things that are like that too, like in the way that you enjoy all the arts and the way that you apply yourself to making this book happen, and even something like being a visual artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've actually done, I'm a little bit out on my memory of it because I was just a little bit too young to have really solid memories of this, but you had like multiple art shows in Vancouver where you presented some of your artwork, right?
Yeah, I was really focusing on my artwork when you were young, participated in a number of group shows, and then had a chance to show all my work at my friend John Bishop's restaurant. And then as well through my own show, I think a year or two after that, in a friend's studio in False Creek area. So yeah, that was fun. And that was... I think I wasn't working so much then, and I was really focusing on creating artwork, and then that was a wonderful time and lots of fun and very satisfying.
And you sold some paintings.
I did, yeah.
What kind of an outlet was that for you? You were around like 40 or early 40s, and you started really doing that more than you ever had before. Like, what did that mean to you? What did it feel like when you started to do that more at that age?
Well, it was so fascinating because you were
7,
about
8.
No, I'm thinking when you were about
younger.
4 or 5.
Oh yeah.
We stayed home together and we played, and I let you have my pastel chalks, and we just played around in the garden, and we did art side by side. And I did not set out to be an artist. It came and tapped me on the shoulder and it said, "Hey, you're an artist." And then I had a few pieces in a community show at Place des Arts, and won an honorable mention. And that was amazing. It's like, oh my goodness. So I never thought to do artwork that way or become an artist. It just evolved organically and spoke to me and showed me that was something that I could do and that I loved and that we enjoyed. And so that was a pretty lovely beginning. And then I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to do more of this.
Yeah. I'm curious what you want to share about some of the ways that music got into your life, because this is a music show and you did have community music experiences where you got to sing and play folk and guitar music with your friends when you were younger.
I did. And music has been a huge part of my life. I sang in church. I started singing in church when I was 12 with my best friend, leading the 8:30 a.m. Mass on Sundays, a cappella. And then in high school, I was really involved in the musicals that we did. I got to be Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So I had all these great solos. I still have the original libretto for that. We did that in that would have been 1974 or
wow,
75, something like that.
You pulled that libretto and you showed it to me when Royal City Musical Theatre did their version of it.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That was really cool.
So I asked for a guitar for Christmas when I was 13 years old, and my family wasn't musical at all, and I had to teach myself how to do it. And it started just really with really rudimentary basic chords, and I got a book, and I was singing with another group of some older girls who played the guitar. So I got a little mentoring there too, I guess. But I taught myself how to play the guitar, and then I sang with my girlfriends. And so, interesting little aside, the Catholic Church at the time was trying to become more modern and keep young people engaged. So in the late 1970s, they had folk masses. So young people could go to church on Saturday night to a folk mass, and that would count for their Sunday, and then they could go out and party on Saturday night, and they didn't have to get up and go to church on Sunday morning. So we did the Saturday night folk mass for a few years. It kept me going to church for a few years longer anyways. And so picked the tunes and sang the songs, and so I played guitar and my girlfriend sang with me. So that was kind of the late 70s. And then we sang at weddings and stuff. And then we all kind of went on to our school and working lives, and that sort of fell apart. I sang for a while with a women's vocal ensemble at Place des Arts when you were young.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. More recently, I've had my own sort of vocal coach where I've just for fun have been singing. But aside from singing, just music in general, I love music as much as I love books, and it's just such a huge part of my life. So I don't even know what life would be like without it. It gets me doing my gardening, it gets me cleaning the house.
Yeah.
I couldn't be without music at all.
There's a few different periods of music history that I feel like you listen to more than others. Like there's the music of your youth, of course, like especially like the 70s.
Oh yeah,
for sure. 70s going into the 80s. And then there's also stuff from when I've been around, from my own time for sure. And like there's this continuum where you still listen to some music kind of every year. And so it's not like you were stuck in one era, you kept listening to things, maybe not quite as much as when you were younger.
I think most people would agree, though, that their favorite sort of era of music is when they were kind of in their teens or 20s.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the 70s. But my sister was a few years older than me, and so I also listened to her stuff a few. But I mean, hey, Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, Gordon Lightfoot, Steely Dan, How can you go wrong? Yeah. So I still love all that music, but there's interesting stuff that's come up along the way that I also enjoy. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I also think that you really have a thing for this kind of like you say, you enjoy all the arts, you have this thing for like kind of a more literary songwriter. Like even more contemporary examples of that would be people like Shane Koizan or Nick Cave or people who are kind of more lyrical.
The poets. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Huge fan.
And like a Gordon Lightfoot would be similar to that too, of course, for sure. Or Bob Dylan. Yeah. Regarding the 60s stuff, like I had our neighbor in the West End of New West here, Jonathan Bayliss. I had him on the show, and he's a little bit older than you, but he was talking about how he got into music like a lot of people of his generation in the late 60s when those things came out, and it was part of the church life too, if you were a young person too. Yeah, that music was so central to the culture at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I told you one of my very first memories was dancing at a sock hop. I was 12 years old in the basement of St. Pat's Parish Rectory, grade 6, 12 years old, sock hop to Jackson Browne, Doctor My Eyes. And I can remember that like it was yesterday. I think that was the first time I felt grown up, and I was actually, and really grooving and dancing to a song.
Yeah. And you were like 12?
I was 12. Yeah. That was the very first time, I think.
Yeah, preteen life. Yeah, totally. And then you also have one where you saw Chilliwack, but that was in high school, right?
Yes, at Maple Ridge Secondary. And Chilliwack came and played at one of our school dances, and they played California Girl. And it's like, oh my God, like these people are famous, or they're well known. And I mean, I just heard that song the other day, and it took me back to that. I remember distinctly, have this vision of when they were playing California Girl. So.
Yeah. Anything else? Those are the ones that stick out in my mind, stories that I've heard from you a few times.
Discovering Holly Cole.
Oh, that's a cool one.
I saw her on TV. Let's see, we were in the house in Queen's Park, so it would have been, you were only a few years old. I saw this young woman singing on TV, and I thought, oh my God, who is this? And I repeated her name a couple times so I could find out more about her. And then I did. I think she had her first album out then. And I've been a big fan and followed her all along, seen her in person 3, 4, 5 times, and have a lot of her albums. But I remember just being mesmerized by her.
What about like Sarah Celine? Aren't you a fan of hers?
Yes, absolutely. And I did not know that much about her. And a friend of mine who was a fan, said, she's going to be playing at the Shadbolt Center, which is very close to us here. You want to come with me? And it's like, yeah, sure. And went to this beautiful little intimate concert and absolutely fell in love with her work, and hope she comes out here again. I know she's not out here on the West Coast very much, but and to see her live is spectacular. Yeah.
What about Jesse Cook?
Right?
Did we go see Jesse Cook together?
We did.
Yeah, at the Queenie?
We went and saw him at the Queenie. It was a very big show.
I don't remember when that was.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I've got a picture of it somewhere. I can't quite. I also saw him at the Mount Baker Theater too. Just fabulous. Yeah.
He's got a new album coming out in December 2021.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So this episode is going to have come out, and his album will have already dropped, but we haven't heard it yet, so we can't talk about it. But we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what he's bringing to the table.
Put that one on my Christmas list, Will.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think now of other concerts that we've been to together. It's not a huge, long list, but there's got to be some. Yeah. I mean, for sure, we went to the P&E a couple times when I was in high school.
We saw Randy Bachman
and BTO.
Yes, at the P&E one summer, and I'm also thinking about when was it the Royal City Theater or the high school that did West Side Story? Yeah, and I took you to that.
I think
you
it was
were
Royal City
quite
Musical
young,
Theater. Yeah,
and you thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and they did a fantastic job. Yeah. So I felt that was almost like a little bit of an introduction to musical theater for you.
For me? Oh, yeah, because I didn't know. Yeah. And that's the thing is I didn't really pay attention to music at all too much before I became active as a player. Like it was really a situation where I started to learn by doing, and like, I knew the kind of music that you would have listened to or that my dad would listen to, but I didn't like have my own taste going so much yet. I kind of had to get that going when I started to play. And that's why I'm floating era-wise. Like I'm not really attached. I don't have like a music of my youth as much as other people do. That's probably pretty typical of other people my age too, is that we're less grounded in the music of our time, because the music of all times is more accessible to us all the time.
And
right?
I think there's just so much more inventory.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought of another great one, and it was at the Massey Theatre, Burton Cummings.
Oh, yeah.
Just him and a piano
Yeah.
on stage. It was just because all those songs from when I was young, and he played them so well and sounded so great. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I know. After we finish, I'll think of several more.
Well, this has just flown by. It's pretty awesome.
Lots to talk about. I don't think we'll ever run out of things to talk about.
No. And it's so cool that we get to live a block away from each other here in New West. I definitely try not to take that for granted. So I always appreciate that. It's fun to come over here and do the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll close out with this. You've been throwing around with me a couple of ideas about what you might write next, and it's like different ebook ideas that you might do, because there's topics that are percolating in your mind. And I've got a couple of them that I might mention if you don't. So don't feel like you have to hit them all. But which ebooks are you thinking you're going to write next?
Well, one is just what's right, in my face every week, and that's 52 vegan Sunday suppers, because, we have this fabulous dinner together every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I try and make this wonderful vegan dinner, and I do a sort of a flat lay photograph of it when I'm prepping it in the afternoon, and I've been posting it on social media, and I just think I'm just going to collect those, and then after I have 52 weeks of them, I'll do one about that, because that's kind of fun. People have enjoyed that. I also feel that there's a really simple book that could boil down sort of nice, healthy meal prep to something that's so simple. And I know we've talked about this a lot. Something that you could do where you just have a fork, a knife, a spoon, a bowl, a frying pan, and a pot. And that, you don't need gadgets. You don't need a lot of fancy tools and equipment. That just with those things and simple ingredients and a few steps. And I would think this might be a good book for young people going off to college, or people just starting out, to make it simple. And I think, just coming back to what Front Matter Press said about my book, they said it was about being resourceful and accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm really interested in. I love sharing all this stuff, and I want to make it really accessible to people. And I want to explain it in a way that takes away the mystery in terms of design principles and stuff, but also in terms of cooking. And the book in general talks about, in any of these facets of a creative life, to break it down into simple things that makes it less mysterious and easier for people to try.
Yeah. Isn't there another one about all the places you lived when you were growing up?
Yeah, I've been sort of collecting some notes about that. Yeah, about all the homes that I've lived in and what they felt like, and how at first they were very barren and simple. And my family, there was no sort of creative or artistic aspect of. We lived very simply, and yet I still evolved into this very creative person. So I was starting to look at that. Yeah. And culminating with, right now, the place that I've lived in the longest of my whole life, this house, which is very special to me. So we moved a lot. It was about those homes and their environment and their ambiance in relation to sort of developmental stages in life and stuff. So yeah, right. Forgot about that one.
I have not once ever had to worry about any lack of creativity in my family, immediate family, because you've always been there, and I've only ever been trying to be as creative as you. So thanks for inspiring everybody, including me.
And thank you for being you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rhythm Changes podcast. If you haven't followed the feed yet, make sure you do, and think about your friends who might enjoy listening too. Tell them to search for the Rhythm Changes podcast wherever they get their podcasts. Link them to our website, rhythmchanges.ca, Facebook at Chernoff Music, or Instagram and Twitter at Rhythm Changes BC. The Rhythm Changes podcast is a Chernoff Music production.